So, as I was peacefully writing my script for the next episode of the Mythology of Kingdom Hearts, Santa Monica Studios decided to drop this bomb during the state of play. And if you know anything about this channel, you'll know that I find the God of War series to be a pretty fun and interesting take on mythology as a whole. So, in this video, I wanted to take the time to discuss the 23-minute trailer and try to iron out any confusion on some of the characters and their mythologies that were shown. And before we start, I should say that the info that's available to us on the game is currently pretty sparse, so any info that I get wrong here, please understand that I'm working off of what is currently available. So I'll try to correct anything in the future as we get more information. But without further ado, let's get into it. The trailer opens with the beginning of the Norse saga for God of War, with Atreus and Kratos cremating Faye before journeying off to spread her ashes, to which we see her spirit be lifted and brought into the afterlife, which, as you'll see in just a minute, is a bit odd given the mythology of the region. But this is actually where our first mythology bit needs some clarification, since the afterlife in different mythologies, including Norse belief, is a little complex. First off, gods can indeed die, and in various stories and mythologies, they actively do so in a variety of means. For both the Aesir and Vanir gods of Norse belief, when their physical bodies die or they are killed, as is the case with Baldur, son of Odin and god of light, they are received within the halls of Hel, where they will spend their eternity existing in a state of darkness and neutrality. Of course, if you've seen the DLC for Ragnarok, you'll know that there are also different realms of the dead alongside Hel, that being Niflheim, of which Helheim resides inside of, as well as Valhalla and Folkvangr, which again were regions situated within the realm of Asgard, the realm of the gods. For these different realms of death, however, they primarily took on common and everyday people who had either died in battle or had died of natural causes. So what's fascinating here is that when Faye dies, she actually should have been brought down through Midgard and brought into Helheim, as her being a Jotun or giant in these games meant that she would have been received within Helheim, but is instead brought up and into this new afterlife. Comparatively, among the Greeks, the afterlife was split into three distinct regions. Within the realm of Hades, that being Elysium, the realm of heroes, Asphodel, the fields of the everyday, and Tartarus, the pit of damnation. The God of War series is no stranger to these locations, as Kratos has been to each of these locations and actually crawled back from them numerous times. However, what differs here in comparison to the Norse belief is that the Greek pantheon, both above and below the earth, are entirely immortal. The same is even said of the Titans and Primordials who existed before the Olympians were even created. As such, there is no dedicated region for them to exist in when their physical bodies die. This is why within the Greek saga it was so impactful when the Greek gods did die, as they were seen as the physical embodiments of their respective forces, leading to the Greek landscape being brought to ruin. So then, what exactly is this new region the God of War series is taking us to? Well, as we learn later in the trailer from a gelatinous cube, and yes, we will be talking about the cube, we learn that this place is referred to as the Everywhen, a name that quite literally means to be everywhere at all points in time, past, present, and future. A concept that originated in 1956 thanks to Australian anthropologist W.E.H. Stanner, who used the title to describe and simplify the complexities of the dreaming of Australian Aboriginal belief. The term itself is not recognized within Aboriginal culture, but is more of an outsider perspective on how the culture views time and their connections to it. For the Indigenous people of Australia, the dreaming is a philosophical concept that helps their culture reflect and learn about their ancient past when ancestral spirits called this land their home. Not physically dreaming like what happens when we fall asleep, but through ritualistic sight to understand the past, present, and future. A link that helped the many communities to share stories and impart knowledge onto the next generations, connecting each person to one another, no matter the time or the place. So, to see the Everywhen being used here to describe a realm of death that exists parallel to the mortal plane is, I think, a really fantastic way to connect everyone to everything, no matter the time period. This is why later in the trailer we see multiple cultures and mythologies existing within one place, even though they did prosper at different times. As we move forward a bit into the trailer, we do see two adorable creatures, and to be honest, I'm not really sure what to make of them. For this weird fox lizard thing, I have two working theories right now. On the lizard side of it, or rather amphibian side of it, I want to say that this could be God of War's interpretation of a salamander. I say this strictly due to the fact that its coloration resembles a glowing fire, and that it does have reptilian or even amphibian qualities about it. In European belief, the salamander was believed to be a mythical creature and spirit of fire, as its skin appeared to be moist or slick whenever people encountered it. Even Aristotle was quoted in saying that the salamander represented fire and could potentially extinguish it, a belief that would go on well into the medieval period and the Renaissance, where artists would depict the creatures in various forms, being either on or in fire. Additionally, the alchemist and philosopher Paracelsus would go on to further this notion that the salamander represented the element of fire, with others like the sylphs, who represented wind, existing as natural forces and spirits of the world. As for the other theory I have for this creature, this may be a Huli Jing, a fox spirit of Chinese mythology, a creature that was meant to represent both the benevolent and malevolent nature of omens for any who see it. What's more is that these foxes were said to be able to shapeshift to portray different creatures and even humans to exact their will and desires. That said, this one, in all honesty, is a bit of a stretch, since the Huli Jing are the progenitors of the kitsune of Japanese folklore, as they're primarily seen with multiple tails. However, given its inquisitive nature and almost puppy-like demeanor, I don't think it's too far to presume that this could be Santa Monica's interpretation of it. As for this curious creature, since the opening seems to draw much of its inspiration from East Asian beliefs, this weird horse fox thing might be a Qilin of Chinese mythology. Dubbed the Chinese unicorn, the Qilin, much like our own interpretation of the unicorn, is seen as an entirely benevolent creature that was said to usher in prosperity and virtue to the communities that were graced by its presence. And as we see the soldiers whom we later fight doing what they can to control it, we can assume that they mean to capture and harness the power of this mythical creature to conquer the afterlife. Furthermore, the Qilin was seen as one of the four preeminent beings within Chinese mythology, standing alongside those like the dragon, the tortoise, and the phoenix, creatures that within Chinese belief were each seen as wholly benevolent, who all represented not only renewed life, but also immortal life at that. As we continue into the trailer, we do meet these two deities of war and of violence. But before we do talk about them, let's actually talk about the dynamic duo that is Rue and Phranque, as their inclusion here is honestly the oddest part of this entire scene. Starting with Rue, the effect of the ribbon being sentient while attached to the sword is an interesting take, since there have been plenty of games like The Legend of Zelda's Master Sword and Soul Calibur's Soul Edge, where the sword itself is sentient. But again, due to the fact that there is a lot of Central and East Asian influences here, we can assume that Rue has some connections to these as well. That said, I couldn't find any specific example of a magical ribbon or one with full sentience. Historically, however, ribbons being at the end of swords were in part a decoration to visibly show the wielder's cultural background and nobility, and as silk tassels were seen as symbols of strength, it's believed as well that they could be wrapped around the wrist to not only help improve the grip, but also to potentially throw the swords and pull them back in desperate cases. I should say that last belief is not the most widely accepted, as swords, especially throughout East Asia, were prized possessions that would be passed down from one generation to the next. As for Phranque, this one's actually pretty funny to me, as I was just recently asked on stream while playing Final Fantasy XIV whether gelatinous cubes had any mythology, to which I have to say, they don't. But there might be something here due simply to the fact that Phranque is referred to as a cosmic cube, a cube that may just draw its inspiration from the cube of Metatron, an archangel who sat at the highest of all angels of ancient Hebrew belief. So for any of you who enjoyed the idea of Kratos fighting Jesus, this just might be Santa Monica's homage to that idea. To start, Metatron is seen as one of, if not the most powerful of angels, to sit under God's ruling, where he acts as both a mediator between him and humanity, as well as a scribe of God's words. This is furthered by the fact that in early Kabbalah and apocalyptic literature, references of Enoch and Metatron are made to be one and the same, as Enoch was said to be gathered, purified, and made into an angel and guardian of souls, entering into heaven. As for Metatron's cube, the symbol is seen within Jewish mysticism as a sacred shape that represents reality, interconnection, and spirituality throughout the cosmos, acting in somewhat the same fashion as the Sephirot of Jewish esotericism, where one represents the tree of life, sharing the flow of spirituality from the known to the unknown, while the other represents the fruit of life, allowing one to expand their knowledge of the cosmos through their connection to God. So, not an actual physical cube like Phranque here, but acting instead as a methodology for spiritual ascension. Of course, Phranque could just be a gelatinous cube from D&D, which would still be awesome, to be honest. But now, let's talk about these two gods who appear to be in control of this portion of the Everywhen, Begtse and Sekhmet. To start, I honestly thought that Begtse was originally the demon of Japanese Buddhist belief, Ashura, given their red skin, Oni-like appearance, and aggressive nature. That quickly went out the window as Sekhmet refers to him as Begtse, which means that I was pretty close to immediately recognizing him. According to Tibetan and Mongolian mythology, Begtse is seen as both a lord of war and a protector of dharmic law within Buddhism. For Tibetan mythology, Begtse serves as a Dharmapala alongside other protectors like Palden Lamo, the glorious goddess, and Mahakala, the wrathful Buddha, all of whom sit as the principal guardians of the spiritual law of both Hindu and Buddhist belief, being seen to act violently against anyone who deviates from the Dharma or forces others to do the same. As for Begtse's place within Mongolian mythology, this is actually where it gets slightly complicated, as for Mongolians, for the most part, they did not have an organized religion as we see with the Norse, Greek, or even Egyptian mythologies, as many Mongolians primarily followed what's known as Tengriism, a form of shamanism or potentially animism, which holds that all things have a spiritual essence under the sky. However, as Buddhism grew during that first century CE and progressively interacted with the Mongolian Empire over the next 1,000 years, aspects of both cultures and religions began to intertwine, subsequently forming the depiction of Begtse Chen, like the one you see here, to appear much in the same way as the Asuras of both Hindu and Buddhist belief within India. With that said, I should note that Begtse is believed to have been a Mongolian god before Buddhism had melded with the traditional Mongolian belief. However, some of the earliest depictions of Begtse, or at least the only ones that I could find, date to the 11th and 12th centuries, a time when Mongolian Buddhism was prominent throughout the empire. So, if you happen to have any more info on this, please do share it here, either in the comments or even on my Discord. But now, let's cover Sekhmet, who okay, to be honest, I'm not a fan of this. Don't get me wrong, the actual design of the character looks great, but this isn't Sekhmet. To clarify, within Egyptian belief, Sekhmet was seen as a multifaceted goddess who presided over not only war, but also life and balance, where she was both a goddess among the greater pantheon of Egyptian mythology, as well as an aspect of the sun god, Ra. This is why she is often depicted with a sun disk above her head, connecting her not only to her father, Ra, but also serving as an invocation of him. Furthermore, Sekhmet, being Ra's anger personified, was often depicted with the head of a lioness, as it is the lioness of the pride who goes out to hunt their prey. And unfortunately, that's not what we see here in this depiction of Sekhmet. And to be honest, when I first saw this goddess, I initially thought that this was Quetzalcoatl of Aztec belief, as this goddess is shown to have more of a snake-like appearance, with eyes matching those of snakes, a color palette which perfectly matches the feathered serpent, as well as feathers throughout her mask, shoulder pads, and gauntlets. Of course, in Aztec belief, Quetzalcoatl is considered to be male, but plenty of games and other media have gender-swapped characters. What's even more annoying to me about this is that the lion creature that she calls upon appears to be the more traditional depiction of Sekhmet, and as their form looks like a lioness, it even is depicted with a sun disk of their own. Annoyance aside, perhaps this design choice was intended to create a bit of confusion, as in ancient Egyptian belief, snakes were viewed as the embodiments of malevolence in both the mortal realm as well as the afterlife, with the most prominent being Apep or Apophis, being the great devourer of light and the lord of chaos, who fought against Ra every night within the Duat to devour any souls that they could. Additionally, the primordial snake of Egyptian belief, Nehebkau, was traditionally perceived as an evil spirit before his eventual transformation into a benevolent deity of death and of the afterlife. In this, perhaps this is what Santa Monica is going for with this depiction of Sekhmet, showing her here to be more snake-like to convey her malevolence in the beginning before changing her to her lioness form, or even to her form as Hathor to bring light to a world of death. Nevertheless, as the trailer comes to a close, we're finally given the name of the game, God of War Laufey, and our final element to this mythological puzzle. What's surprising with this, however, is that as a figure of Norse mythology, Laufey gets more screen time in Ragnarok than in all of her appearances throughout both the poetic and prose Eddas. Oftentimes, she is only referred to through her son Loki Laufeyarson, though on one occasion she is mentioned as the wife of the Jotun Farbuti, whose name translates from Old Norse as angered striker. And though Laufey is technically a goddess, as she is listed among other goddesses of the Aesir, many are still unsure if she was actually a goddess like Frigg or Sif, due to her connection to nature, as the Lauf portion of her name is the Old Norse word for leaves. So, God of War depicting her as a Jotun or a giant is still pretty accurate. But aside from her other name being Null, meaning needle, that's about all we have to go off of with our new protagonist. Having said all that, I'm personally very excited to see what's in store for God of War Laufey, and I'd love to see what you thought of this brief look into the mythology here, and what you're most excited for with this new entry. If you've enjoyed this and are new to the channel, be sure to like and subscribe to help out. As well, a massive thank you to all my patrons who help support the channel. With that, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.